Hi, welcome to Lunar Linux. I'm a Linux enthusiast who enjoys tinkering the Linux operating system and sharing it with others. I would kind of like to try and dissolve some of the mystery and the apprehension about installing Linux operating system and this kind of aura of difficulty that it has around it. So today I'm going to walk through installing Kubuntu 22.04, which is just Ubuntu 22.04 with the KDE Plasma desktop environment onto a VM. It works exactly the same way on normal hardware, and I'll walk through how you would go about that as well. So I'm going to get started. So I'm going to start a VM because if you want to tinker with the Linux operating system, a great way to do that is in a virtual machine because you cannot harm the physical hardware by using a virtual machine. You can do whatever you want in it. You can mess up. You can format the hard drive incorrectly. You can do all that kind of stuff, and all of your actual data on board is going to be safe. So to start, I am in the OS I'm currently running in is Kubuntu 22.04. I've already done the install on the physical hardware. I installed Oracle's VirtualBox Virtual Machines application, and I'm actually going to go through this from the get-go. So when you start it, if you're in Linux, just a quick heads up if you're trying to do this in Linux already and you're in Ubuntu operating system, make sure that you add yourself to the VBox users group so you can have full access to all the VBox stuff. And I actually need to do one thing here real quick, and that is references. I'm not sure that I put the VBox extension package in, so I'm gonna. Okay, I don't know why I don't have. Eh, there we go. So that's gonna allow USB, proper USB controls, etc., etc. Like you want the extension package. That's something you downloaded with it as well. So we're gonna install this. Hopefully it works. I'm not sure why. Oh, okay. That was a little bit. That was a little bit cheeky. There we go. Okay. So now this is ready to set up a VM. So we're going to hit new. We're going to say this is going to be Kubuntu. And it knows already. It picks that up automatically. It's a Linux operating system. It's Ubuntu. And yeah, it's 64-bit. We're going to hit next. We want this to have. Actually, I'm going to do this. And let's type it in again. Okay, Kubuntu, Linux, Ubuntu. We want this to have 8 gig of RAM. This is obviously dependent on how much system memory you have. So on this tower here, I have 32 gig of memory. So I'm going to give it 8 gig, and that should be more than enough. Linux is a very lightweight operating system. It does not take a lot of hardware to run it. It can run on as little as, I think the minimum requirement for Ubuntu is 2 gig of RAM. Kubuntu will be similar, I believe. I'm not sure I'm going to find it this quickly, and I don't want that to download, please. But 2 gig of RAM, I believe, is the minimum, and so anywhere between 2, 8 is more than enough. If you want to go big and you have a lot of RAM, go give it 16. It's fine. It's going to run great. So I would recommend if you have a lower spec machine, right? So say you only have 8 gig in your machine, do give it 4 gig. Give it a little bit more than 2 because just it will run, but it won't run as well. So I'm gonna be good with that with my 8 gig of RAM. We want to create a virtual hard disk so that we can have a hard drive. Folder already exists. Yes, that's right, because I was tinkering with this later. So I got to go fix that over here. You go away. Okay, try that again. All right. 30 gig is more than enough to just play around with it. I don't think you would need anything more if you're trying to actually make a VM where you're going to be using it as a normal operating system. Sure, give it more, but if you just want to tinker, 30 gig is enough for it to be happy to install and for you to have room to play around and install some apps and stuff. So we're going to hit create, and here we go. So I'm going to go settings on the machine, and there's a few things you want to do right off the bat. So first, I don't want it to boot off floppy. Go optical first, and then boot from the hard drive. We are going to enable EFI because Ubuntu is a UEFI operating system, so it uses EFI to boot. Processor, I'm going to give it 8 cores because we have cores to spare. Again, if you have a lower spec machine and you only have 8 cores or 4 cores, 2 two of those 4 cores, 4 of those 8 cores. Try to give it enough so that it has a chance. It will run with 1 core. Just it will take a lot of time. We have more than enough video memory to be able to crank that as far as we want. IDE controller is very not necessary. So we're gonna go SATA because this is running off USB, so this SATA is fine. So Kubuntu VDI, we're gonna go make sure you hit this solid state drive. If you have a solid state drive, it will speed up your life significantly. And then we also need an optical drive. So we're gonna go ahead and add a ISO here. Where are we going? Right here. We're gonna add this. This is the ISO file for Kubuntu 22.04. So when you're installing a Linux OS, this is how you get them, right? So say that's what where I was at previously. So if you go to Kubuntu.com and you go to download, right here, you click this, it's just gonna immediately start downloading this ISO right here. That's really awful that you can't see that. Settings. Okay. So it'll immediately start downloading. They are pretty big, so they will take a while to download. It's the whole OS bundled up into a disk image. If you wanted Kubuntu, it is kubuntu.org, and same verse, same as the verse right here. Click this, download it, you get the ISO. So when you have that ISO for a VM, you take it, add it to an optical or a disk drive in the VM, and then because up here, where in the world was that motherboard? Hi. Because we said optical boots first, when we start the VM, it will just immediately try to boot off of that disk. Audio is fine, network's fine. I'm not sure we'll be passing any USB to the VM, but if we do, let's go ahead and have it be 3.0. And I want this to show at the top of the screen so it doesn't interfere with the toolbar down here. So hit OK, and give everything a run over. 8 gig of RAM, 8 processors. We have an optical hard drive. We have EFI, cranked the video memory. We have a hard drive, so that's all good and working. So let's go ahead and start the VM. All right, please don't show me that again. Please don't show that again, and don't boot automatically. Okay, I understand. Full screen. Okay, so this is Grub, the Grand Unified Bootloader that most Linux operating systems right now tend to ship with. The only one I know of that doesn't is Pop! OS. So this is a bootloader. It allows you to pick and choose what boot files you want to run. And so, as you can see, it says UEFI. We're running in a UEFI mode. Most computers made in the last 5 years, and honestly a little before that, are a UEFI BIOS, which means they boot UEFI OSs. So this is what we can use if we want to try dual booting a machine, for example. But I can explain more about that later. First, for now, we're just gonna say try or install Kubuntu, and it will start loading off of that ISO in the virtual optical drive that we made. Okay, hello. So, if you want to try Kubuntu, you can click try Kubuntu here, and I'm going to go ahead and do that. So you can just go straight into the installer from here, but this will allow me to show this. So this is loaded right off the disk. So we are just running the operating system directly off of that live image. As you can see, it's if you've seen Linux OSs before, it's a fairly it is the Linux OS, right? It's running an image of it. There's no persistence on this. It's just loaded up on the disk and in RAM. So when we shut it down, this will all just go away. It'll be blanked. But if you want to configure your hard drive before you set it up, the installer will automatically do it for you, and it has a default setup that it just says, "Hey, here's what I got," and I'm gonna lay down, and it'll just wipe the whole drive, or you can pick and choose. But I like to be a little bit more, what's the word for it? I like to have a little bit more control over what it does. So I'm gonna download an app here called Gparted. So this is Kubuntu, which uses the apt packaging manager. So if you want to download an app, we're going to say sudo, you have to do it as a super user, apt get install Gparted. And it's going to go ahead and pull that down. Again, this is not permanent. It's on a live image, so this will not stay once we've installed the OS. But so we downloaded this. I should have thrown it in system, gparted, right here. All right. So here's that hard drive we created. Now, this is a VirtualBox hard drive, which means it's 30 gig in size, but it's not really 30 gig in size because we said it was dynamically allocated. So it will only take up as much space as it needs on the host hard drive. So I am not going to format this. I'm going to allow the installer to do what it wants, but I just want to demonstrate to you guys that if you're installing this on physical hardware, you would probably want to come in here first and plan out how you want it to go. And I'm going to explain more about what it's going to do in the actual installer because it'll be easier. So at this point, I'm just going to hit install Kubuntu, or if you were going to do this from the get-go, you would have clicked that on that first screen that popped up, and it would bring up this, which is the Ubuntu installer. This is the same for Kubuntu or any OS based on that. So what I just did there, wireless is fine because it is a VM, so it's getting passed directly from the host. English is fine for both the language and the keyboard, so I just clicked through that. Didn't really care. On this screen, a normal installation pulls down, like it says, right? A web browser utilities, Office software, so that's the LibreOffice suite, and additional internet applications and media players. I'm going to go with that. I want all that stuff. If you don't and you want a bare bones OS, very clean, very little extra stuff installed, click minimal installation and it'll pull down just the bare minimum essentials. Downloading updates while installing Kubuntu, I'm going to just do that. It does save some time. It just downloads. It doesn't apply. So once we finish the update, we can just lay those down again and it will patch. And then we also want to install third-party software for graphics and Wi-Fi. So this is very important if you're on physical hardware. I did that when I set up my T5 here because, for example, I have an NVIDIA graphics card in this machine. NVIDIA drivers are third-party software, but if you click this, Ubuntu has packaged those NVIDIA drivers in such a way that you can easily install them, assuming you've said, hey, make that part of my install right here. So I want that. So hit continue. It'll chug through that and then bring up this disk setup. So these three options are the automatic ones. Guided will just say, okay, here's the preset Ubuntu default, right? And I'll install it. Setting up an LVM is a volume manager, and you can do that and encrypt it. I'm going to just do this because it's VM. I'm not worried about it being fancy. I'll use the entire disk. But when I do it on physical hardware, I typically go manually. And I'm going to come in here, and it'll say, all right, here's your SDA. There's no GPT on it yet. So it hasn't created a partition table, so it can't write things to it yet until it creates that. I'm gonna not play with that on here. But once we've installed this, I can show you what the physical hard drive looks like, and I can explain that a little bit more. So guided use entire disk, that's great. Install that. Yeah. Okay, so it's telling us what it's going to do, right? So it says here's the SDA, the virtual disk image that VBox created, and it's going to make two partitions on it. The first partition is an ESP. So this is an EFI system partition that the bootloader is going on. So that is what a UEFI BIOS will scan a hard drive looking for these EFI system partitions, and when it sees one, it knows, okay, this is where the files I need to boot are located. And so it'll show up in your BIOS as a bootable entry because of this ESP. ext4 is a journaling system. It's a very standard journaling system that most Linux OS will use. It's a very default basic journaling system that works, and that's why it's the Ubuntu default. So we're going to hit continue, and it's going to start formatting in the background, as you can see down here. Well, it asks us a few questions. Time zone. Eastern time zone for me is great. I'm going to roll with that. Go ahead and make your username. So it's going to ask you your name, and then your username is always going to be lowercase, and it usually just takes the first part of your name. Like whatever I put after this, it's just going to say first part of your name in lowercase. Throw in a password. And then name it Lunar VirtualBox. That's fine. And yes, I want my password to log in. Hit continue. And then at this point, we just sit here and we wait for it to install. So I'll see you guys once this is done installing. Okay, It is done. It's done installing, and I'm eating my mic. There we go. So we can hit restart. It might critical error. I've had Ubuntu likes to critical error. Okay, so VBox is very kind. So Ubuntu and Kubuntu wants you to usually if you're installing on physical hardware, you're going to have some sort of installation medium, whether it be a USB thumb drive or an actual CD that you've just installed the operating system off of. If you were installing on bare hardware, unplug it and then hit enter. VirtualBox has already removed it from the machine, so I can just hit enter, and it should reboot. I say should. Halo? There it is. It's always a little bit nerve-wracking when it just has nothing but a black screen. Are you actually rebooting, or are you saying that you're stuck? Yep, he's not super happy. Okay, I'm gonna just reset the box because the hard drive is fine. It just needs to get to it. There we go. All right. Control R does a quick reset, and you can go up the top. All right, hello. So this is Kubuntu 22.04. If I could put my password in. So at this point, you have a fully functioning installed Linux machine inside of a virtual machine so that you're not going to hurt this. So, right, here's Kubuntu in the VM, and here's Kubuntu outside the VM. What's outside the VM cannot be accessed by this unless you specifically allow it to through different settings here. So at this point, you're just free to tinker and play around and learn and explore. So right after you do an install, it's going to have updates. So we're going to go ahead and do that right now and go get some updates. So here's all of these updates that it should have downloaded already during the update there. So this should just start installing them. Yeah, that's sweet. And while that's at it, remember how we added the guest editions to VirtualBox? Well, we can add those guest editions to the virtual machine. So we're going to go up here to devices, and we're going to come down here to insert guest edition CD and click that. And that should add the guest edition CD to the VirtualBox VM. Great. Mount that and open. And here it is. And we are in Linux, so we want this right here. So we're going to say run in console. Ah, okay, that's right. It wants to do sudo. Okay, so we're going to open this in a terminal. And we're going to say as the super user, /, which is the command to run vbox Linux editions. And truthfully, I probably shouldn't run this while these updates are going on. Yeah, probably not. Okay. Well, let's get those updates like actually applied, and then we'll get guest editions working. So we're gonna reboot. It should come up real quick. Fantastic. Spin. Wow, that was spinning quickly. And now we're up. Okay, and guest editions should still be there. So if I go here, guest editions, open in terminal, sudo / vbox Linux editions. Throw in my password. And, ooh, actually, abort. There are a few packages that need to, there are a few dependencies for this. So I believe GCC, make, and Perl all need to be installed. So we're going to go ahead and pull those down. That also should not take too long at all. Come on, come on, come on. Thank you. All right, so now, so if you press up and down on your keyboard, like the up and down arrow keys, it will toggle through different your commands, your previous commands. So we can go up twice to the run, and we're gonna say run, and I would like to continue. Really? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, 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 yes. Okay, so that's because I canceled, but yes. I'd like to continue. And this is going to lay down guest editions, which will require another reboot, but that is a-okay. And actually, while we're at it, so Kubuntu 22.04 uses KDE as Plasma desktop environment, like I said. And by default, it ships 5.24.4, which is the April release of this. So Plasma rolls out an update every month. They try to do a patch update, and KDE Frameworks version that's actually a few behind as well. So I like to, when I'm using Kubuntu, add the Kubuntu backports PPA. That is spinning so fast and not opening that quickly. Okay, guest editions is ready to rock and roll. So Kubuntu backports, nice backports. So a PPA is a Ubuntu thing. It allows you to add a repository. So it adds a host, a server, if you will, not really, but it adds more things you can pull down with apt. And in this case, it's adding this backport. So this receives major version updates backported from later Ubuntu releases and some stuff from the development release. Basically, instead of freezing all of the KDE Plasma stuff into the state it's at or the versions it was at when 22.04 came out, they'll roll out new updates for you if you want them. So I'm not super worried about this being like a rock solid, you know, LTS thing for me to use. I want the newer updates. I want the new toys and the bug fixes and the patches. So I like to add this. So in order to do that, you go, hey, sudo add apt repository. So this is adding a repository to apt, and then it's a PPA. It's a Kubuntu PPA backports. And then we said sudo, so we're going to have to give our password. We're going to add it. And then it says do a sudo apt update. It did do a sudo apt update right here, but I'll do it again just to make it happy. And then as you can see, now we have more updates than we had previously because this should have new Plasma version for 5.24.5, the May release. So we're going to go ahead and actually, I'm not sure that will work all the way through there. So I'm actually, wait, no, yes, it will. Okay, let's just do it this way. So update all, proceed, knock yourself out. So close that and close that. And then this could take a little bit more time. It is a full Plasma release update, so. And this is actually not the fastest PPA fastest host I've ever had. So I'm gonna let this install, and then I'm gonna reboot with the guest editions, and then I'll meet you guys back up when I get to that point. So I actually did not get the updates done yet, but I want to make a quick update. It did fail to go through using Discover and graphically, so I came up here and I am just sudo apt upgrade. I'm updating it via terminal, and I'm gonna see if I can get this to work. Okay, we're right there. Come on. Come on, one more. There we go. All right, we can throw this thing down and bring it back up. And now we should have guest editions installed, which means that it should go full screen once I log in, which should make it significantly easier for you guys to see. Come on. There we go. All right, that should be a lot easier for you guys to make out. Why is the background so grainy? That's weird. Huh. Wait, there's more updates? You serious? Okay. Proceed. Okay, now we're all up to date. So, that's how to install Kubuntu 22.04. It's very similar for any other VM install. And the only thing you should have to do at this point is, start playing around and figuring out how to how to work things. I think that's a great thing to do with VMs is just to jump in, understanding that you're not necessarily going to understand everything, um, and just try to figure it out because you're gonna learn a lot that way.